With Disney's new Hawkeye series, there is a lot of buzz about Kate Bishop, some good and some bad. And I've seen the take that she is a woke replacement for Clint, pandering to the woman audience. If we're being completely honest here, legacy characters aren't shy about having these types of things thrown at them. Well, actually certain legacy characters. A majority of these takes I've seen say that characters like Sam Alexander, Jaime Reyes, Kamala Khan, Jace Fox, and so many more get called woke, and not the true character. Which is kind of ridiculous when you think about how none of those criticisms were said for characters like Bucky Barnes, Ray Palmer, Ben Reilly, Wally West, and many others. There's no difference between when Richard Grayson took over as Batman to when Jace Fox took over. In fact, I think it would have been smarter for Jace Fox to become Batman since he basically had a clean slate compared to Richard, who had this whole Robin and Nightwing stuff. But still, somehow Jace was complained about more despite having this blank slate and being more faithful to Bruce Wayne's idea of Batman. I don't really think I need to point out why these characters are getting hate and why these characters aren't. You can clearly tell why and also can probably figure out the type of people complaining about these characters. So as an example of why legacy characters matter and also staying topical, I want to establish why Kate Bishop is Hawkeye and why she matters to Clint Barton and the entire legacy and future of Hawkeye, and also how she isn't a replacement for Clint. So first we have to establish who Kate and Clint are. Clint ran away from his abusive parents with his brother and worked in the circus. While at the circus he learned how to use a bow. Once when performing, he saw Iron Man overhead and decided he wanted to be a superhero just like him, and so Hawkeye was created. He also tends to have a dark side with him, becoming Ronin and doing things like getting so angry at a villain that he robs a bank just to mess with the villain. Now let's head over to Kate's backstory. Kate comes from a wealthy family who is your typical evil rich folk. They don't like the poor and Kate doesn't like them for it. Kate also was in many archery, gymnastics, and fencing competitions where she won most of them. When Clint Barton was dead, Captain America found Kate and gave her Clint's bow and encouraged her to become the next Hawkeye. So right off the bat, you can tell how different these characters are. One had to live on the streets and learn for himself, and the other was rich and decided to take a stand for those that aren't rich. You can see that their motives for becoming Hawkeye are different and that you couldn't switch out Clint for Kate. You wouldn't have the same type of Young Avengers book if you made Clint the main Hawkeye, just like you wouldn't have the same Hawkeye freefall story with Kate. The next thing we have to establish is why Kate became Hawkeye. Well, like I said, she was approached by Steve Rogers and asked to become Hawkeye to honor Clint. She never forcefully took the mantle like Tim Drake did in Battle for the Cowl. She was asked to do so. Just like later, Clint was asked to become Captain America and encountered Kate. He didn't forcefully take the mantle of Captain America. Tony Stark asked him to be Captain America. Even later on, Clint would test her to earn the title of Hawkeye while he was using his Ronin persona. And she did. And even if you do still think she's trying to replace Clint, look at some recent comics. She and Clint coexist. There isn't one working while the other has to stay home. They both coexist and even work together. So again, we ask the question, why does Kate becoming Hawkeye matter? Well, for Clint, it showed how he had an impact on the world. He's always been looked at as the weak Avenger, the only one without powers, using a broken harp and a sharp stick. But seeing that he inspired people like Kate showed his worth. Because of this moment, Hawkeye started to focus more on how he's the most human of the Avengers. How he deals with pain and how he struggles with his life. How he can't even seem to be in a relationship. Everything that modern Hawkeye comics are praised for is because of that moment. Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run is fantastic because it shows Hawkeye struggling with his pain and problems of being a superhero. Hawkeye Freefall is great because it shows how he'd lie to his friends and family and how he'd get pushed to such extremes. We won't even have one of my favorite all-time comics, Hawkeye vs. Deadpool, where it shows him doing regular things like participating in Halloween and also just licensing him out. I don't think you would get these moments from Captain America or Thor. You may get their equivalents, but not the regular human versions. And that's important because Kate Bishop has helped introduce that more in the modern Hawkeye comics. So yeah, Kate Bishop matters quite a lot to the character of Hawkeye that many know and love today, and just because you may not like her or identify with her doesn't mean she is woke. I identify Clint more than Kate, yes, but I also identify with Sam Alexander more than Richard Rider. It's important to have enough characters in comics that everyone, no matter their race, sexuality, or gender, can find someone that they identify with. I don't see myself as Iron Man, but I don't hate him. I don't preach how he's ruining the Avengers comics as a whole because I don't see myself as him. Just because I don't see myself as Iron Man doesn't mean no one does. Legacy characters are important because of that feeling. They also help bring back old heroes that no one remembers. How many people remember this guy? This is the first Blue Beetle, and I guarantee a lot of you have not heard the name Dan Garrett, but you sure as heck know Ted Kord or Jaime Reyes. Legacy characters matter, and many comics, including modern comics and even old comics, are built off of them. Just because they're diversifying and helping build up their old characters doesn't mean that they want them gone completely. Hell, Dan Garrett even reappeared recently. I guess what I'm really just trying to say here is, after this really long scripted rant, is that legacy characters are important, and if you don't identify with this certain character, you have plenty more to choose from. Comics have an endless catalog of characters, some more popular than others, but just because a character gets a new legacy doesn't mean that the old one is gone forever.